Have you ever wanted to make your ideas out of cardboard or other simple materials that you might have lying around your house? Or have you tried to make a DIY project but got frustrated because in the end it didn't turn out the way that you wanted? Well, the truth is you have the potential to make amazing projects and crafts, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you a 5-step process to help you create the best crafts possible and always live up to your max potential. And this is a process that is also used by professional engineers when they are trying to create new products and things that'll even be built by robots. So I'm super excited to share this with you. And at the end of the video, I also have a free printout guide of this process. Now let's jump right into the video. So the first thing you need to do if you want to make successful cardboard projects is to consider, and that we need a good framework here if we're gonna make any cardboard project, right? I can't show you a tutorial because I want you to be able to make your own ideas. Now, that when we are considering our ideas, this is really just the thinking phase. You're sort of letting your brain do its thing, right? You've probably had ideas before where you're like, oh, I really like that. Or like you're over here thinking, oh, maybe I could add that feature to my car. Or you're over here like, oh, maybe I could make a phone stand that did that. So those ideas have been bouncing around in your head, and maybe you don't think about those things all the time, and you want to take a moment to sit down and really think about a project to make. That's a great option. Once you have an idea, you want to sort of mull it over in your head. Avoid getting locked into one idea. You don't want to lock yourself down and then not be able to think of new things. You want to really leave that open. So once you're there, take that idea, right? I like to think about it over the course of a few days. So I'll be eating my breakfast, right? And I'll be thinking about my idea. I'll be in bed at night and sort of let that idea go over in my head a few times. I will be in my car thinking about that idea, trying to figure out what it'll do. And then also I'll be in the shower, right? Boom, boom, boom. Thinking about, you know, what if I could make something that did this or that? And there's really two things at work when it comes to thinking of these ideas. Number one, you are thinking about it really consciously, like I've been talking about, and you're practicing your focus. And when it comes to practicing your focus, you're not really gonna be able to do really good focus, really good deep work if you're not paying attention to like preserving your focus. Now, there's a book called Deep Work where they talk about how in today's culture, you can be so distracted, and if you're constantly checking your phone being productive, trying to get things done, even if you're just like scrolling through your email being productive, you are training your brain to be distracted because it doesn't stay focused on one thing for long periods of time. And if you can do things that require a lot of focus, it's going to train your brain to do harder work and get into that flow state. And then also the other side is recent studies have been showing that a lot of people come up with ideas like on walks and in the shower because your brain's subconscious is able to work on things while you're doing partly mindless activities. So if I'm on a walk and I had been thinking about how to make a new kind of cardboard toy gun or something and couldn't really figure out how to make it shoot bullets very well, then I could go on my walk and my subconscious brain would sort of be mulling over it while I was observing the grass. And then eventually something might just pop into my head, and that's your wonderful idea. So I want you to sort of let this roll around in your brain for a while and sort of see what it comes up with between your focused time and then also your subconscious time. And once you have some ideas, you should have a couple that might be rolling around in your brain, you can go into your research phase. Now, I really don't want you to reinvent the wheel when it comes to making your projects, right? Somebody has already done that. You don't need to think about it. There's lots of ways to make wheels. And that can be really extrapolated out. So when I am researching projects, I like to look up lots of different things. So I'll be over here and I'll be on Google looking for ways to make stuff. I can look it up on Google, also go to Google Images, will sometimes have stuff, or look through the product listings that it comes up with on Google. And then two, you can also go to Amazon, and you're not trying to buy products, although maybe you'll see the thing you want to make and decide it's better to buy it. But on Amazon, there's millions of products that have already been carefully engineered and built, and they might have features that you would consider adding to yours. So if you're trying to come up with a cardboard phone stand or a phone stand made out of whatever you want, and you go to Amazon, there'll be many, many different types of phone stand, and that'll give you different sort of, you're like, oh, there's like this style of phone stand that's good for that, and this style of phone stand that's good for this, and it'll show you different ideas for things to make. And then 3, I like to go to AI engines. Now that we're in 2023, I'll ask ChatGPT and whatever the AI engine of your time and choice is, so you can go to that. And the thing about that is you want to really be careful with the way you prompt things to get even better answers. So maybe you have a pretty good idea, and then you want to go into ChatGPT and be a little bit more specific with the way you want it to critique things. So you could ask ChatGPT how to make it simpler, right? You can maybe ask it how I can make this project but make it smaller, right? Or ask it for maybe a way to build the project you're talking about, and it'll give you suggestions for that. I've found that usually not everything is perfect. ChatGPT will give you a lot of ideas, and you got to come and be like, yeah, nope, that's dumb, right? And pick the ones that work best for you. And then also, right, of course, you can go to YouTube and look up videos about how to do things. And when you're researching, you're not only trying to figure out how to build stuff, but you're thinking about the ways you want to invest in your own skills, right? You're going to be building this project with your own hands, pardon my sloppy hand, and you're limited by your skills. So if you perhaps want to make a cool project out of wood, but you don't know how to use your skill saw, then go look up on YouTube, find a tutorial on using a skill saw, and then once you are better with those tools, better at crafting, then you're gonna be able to create a better project. So sometimes I go into a project knowing they're gonna have to coat something in epoxy, and I'll need to look up tutorials on how to coat cardboard in epoxy because I'm not a professional at it, somebody else is. Don't need to make it up on my own. I'll just look up their video, learn that skill, and I might already know what I want to do. I just want to know how to do it. You can research that as well. While you're researching, you should have brought in a ton of ideas from your thinking phase. They're all sort of bouncing around, not really written down, and you can write some stuff down while you're researching as well. I sort of encourage that, but then you'll go in and be like, this idea is really not worth following, so I'm not gonna do that. And that one, I researched it, and like doing that's actually way harder than I thought it was. But this one, that idea is really great. This one, I saw someone do that on YouTube, or I saw a product on Amazon that was like that. And then over here, it'd be like, and I saw these 2 other ideas while I was researching, and they both seem really good. So from this, you're gonna be going into the next phase with 4 ideas right here, going into our architect phase. We are about to get into the next tip. Before we do, I wanted to make sure you know that there's links and special resources down in the description below. I've got that whole guide printout linked down there, as well as some other cool tool guides and videos that I really think are gonna help you out. I put a lot of time into the description. If you check that out, I really think it'd help you out. But now let's get back into the content. When we're architecting, most of this is going to be done in a notebook, right? Because it's easy to use, and it's my personal preference to get things done fast on paper. If you are really smart and able to use a 3D CAD software, then you can use that as well. Make really strong structural models. That's kind of what engineers would do, right? They're coming up with their plans, they sort of brainstorm together, and then they're going to create a full 3D model in like SolidWorks or something, and then they'll be able to test everything in there. But because we're just doing a craft, it's totally fine to use our sketchbook and go about things that way. And in the architect phase, you're gonna take all of those ideas. So we have 4 ideas. We'll say they're for a cardboard phone stand. One will have like an idea where like maybe we'll make like a wedge phone stand right here, right? So I'm like boom, 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 boom. I draw it out. These drawings don't need to look amazing, right? And then I'm gonna be like, there'll be 2 pins to hold it up. And like, well, I had this other idea too. I wanted it to be really minimal. It was gonna be like a little hooky phone stand thing here, and then the phone was just gonna like rest in it like this. But I also wanted like an arm phone stand, so like I'd have like a big base here that would like be really heavy, and then like I'd have a flexible wire coming out, and then like I would clip my phone onto the end with like some rubber bands going around it or something. And then my 4th idea, I was like, well, what if I like did like a folder, like a smaller phone stand and like sort of lean back, and then like There's another piece that came through, and it sort of looked like this if you get my drift, and the phone's gonna sit on it right here. Now I got those 4 ideas, and sometimes your ideas will be pretty similar to each other, or you'll take things back and forth. You'll be like, well, what if I did like idea number 4, but I used the pins from idea number 1? Like, that would be cool. So you're gonna do all that, and then you're gonna start sort of refining these ideas, cutting them down so that you get better. So I'm gonna be here, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna move this idea to the next phase, right? I'm gonna draw a little bit more detail. It's in phase 2 now. This idea also goes to phase 2. This idea, you're like, okay, that was way too much work. It's gonna die right there. We're not gonna do any more detail on it because I can already see that it's not as good as the other ideas. And then I'm gonna be over here, and I'm like, yeah, this idea, he's still pretty good. He's going to phase 2. So I might sketch them all again, except for one, and make them a little bit better, do a little bit different things. And something you wanna figure out here too, when you're architecting your idea, when you're planning it, you're drawing it out on paper, is what are your priorities? If you don't really know what you're going for or what the most important things are, it's gonna be harder to come up with a perfect project. So if I'm here and I'm like, yeah, there's 3 things that I really want this project to be able to do. Those are all really important to me. And then maybe there's some other ones where you're like, yeah, these are sort of on my want list. And I'm like, if I could get these, that would be awesome. And then also, but like I don't need them. And then if you really are specific, you can be like, hey, these are my like explore list. Like these are ideas that would be cool to have, but like if I'm not able to have them, it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna sort of explore that idea. And this is something I would do with much more complicated projects, like when I'm on my robotics team building 120-pound robots for competitions. It's like need, want, explore, because we prioritize our time and work on the things we need the most, and then sort of explore ideas that are less of a priority. That's not an essential step to do here. Mostly I want you to focus on taking these drawings from phase 1 to phase 2, right? We're taking them all, moving them down the train, and then I'm gonna realize that after drawing phase 2, right, like this idea, he's not gonna make it, he's too flimsy. And then this idea is still cool. I wanted a small phone stand, and this one, it's just gonna be way too big, so I don't like it. Turns out this guy gets to phase 3, right? And then once we have our idea, maybe our final idea, maybe you'll have 2 final ideas, and that's okay, or 3, right? If it's a really big project, more complicated. And you can draw the final project. I'm not going to draw in all the detail, but I want you to get as detailed as possible. Sometimes this means that you're going to draw multiple views of the same project, but we want to add dimensions to this. So you might want to be here and be like, yeah, I want this part to be like 3 inches long, and I want this part to be 2 inches long. And to help us with this and help us in our planning, in this phase, it's okay to make prototypes so you can make rough objects. I was making a cardboard sword one time, and I knew that I wanted to do a couple things with it. I wanted to be as strong as possible, and I was using cardboard. So cardboard has corrugation going up and down like this. Normally, if you squeeze cardboard from side to side, it's gonna be weaker. If I squeeze it from up and down, it'll be stronger. So I was trying to figure out the strongest way to put this, but I was folding it in weird ways and wasn't sure how I could make it better once it was folded, like which orientation was the strongest. So I built some tests, and it turned out that I wanted a couple pieces to be strong this way, a couple pieces to be strong that way. Then I took the other pieces of cardboard and built a rough cutaway prototype of the blade. This prototype was kind of thick and unfinished, but it had 3 layers of cardboard is what I decided I wanted. And then it also gave me rough measurements for dimensions, right? So this might have been 4 inches wide, and I was like, that's too wide, but I think I could do a 3-inch version and it would still work out really well. So I can come into my final and be like, I'm gonna make this 3 inches. That's my plan. We can add those dimensions to our final project, draw in the little pins, think about how every component's gonna work together so that you can fail early. You want to fail early, and you want to fail where it's easy to fail. Right now we're trying to fail on paper by drawing our ideas right here, and then we'll move into actually building the project. We don't want to fail once we've put everything together at the very end. It's the cheapest to fail earlier. It's the cheapest on our time, the cheapest on our budget if we're putting money into the project. And now that we have the final project design, there's one more step you need to do before going to Fabricate, and that is to create a best build list. This best build list is going to go through all of the steps that you need to take rough steps to build this cardboard project or whatever material you're using. So number one, right, I was building a cardboard sword. I wanted to create the core. And then number two, right, I wanted to make the blade. Number three, I was gonna Number three, I was gonna make the hilt. And number four, I was gonna make the cross guard. And based on my design, this was the best order to build things in. And it's a little bit more obvious with a cardboard sword, right? You obviously have to build the core before you can go and build the blade around it. But sometimes when we're dealing with more complex or less obvious projects, it's not totally obvious which one we should build first. And occasionally you want to paint things before you actually fabricate them and glue them onto everything. And that would be an important thing to insert into your best build list if there's a certain part that needs to be painted before it's glued onto stuff. This is really going to help you save time because you're not going to have to backtrack on anything, and then also create a more clean project because it's going to look really good from the start. Once we get to our fabricating step, this one is pretty awesome because you finally get to build the project. It's gonna be really fun. And what I want you to do here is, right, you're gonna follow that best build list. And that usually means that we're starting by creating the core of our project. It'll be like a rough shape. Not all projects have a core, but you might have like a PVC pipe that you're using as the centerpiece of your project, and you glue everything onto that. Then you'll go into adding some a little more detailed stuff. This might mean that you're going from rougher materials to finer materials. I might start by building with a PVC pipe, add some really thick cardboard to it, go a little nicer with thinner pieces of cardboard. And then I'm gonna add like little bits of clay to it to make it even cooler. And then I'm gonna like fill it with a filler, right? And then I might also use paint. I might harden my project if I wanted to use epoxy or something. I could coat it in epoxy and make my project harder or stronger like that. And that's also an important thing if you're making that best build list, because if you're coating stuff in epoxy and doing stuff like that, it also can be toxic if you do it in like enclosed environments, and you might want to plan for a time you could do it outside. That's fabricating our project. Once you're done fabricating, you are done with your project. Woohoo, we can have a party, but there's still one more step, and that step is tune. So after all of your celebration, you're finally done with the project. Fabricating it usually takes the longest. Remember, we're going through this C.R.A.F.T framework. It is the word craft is an acronym. We have C.R.A.F.T, that's consider, research, architect, fabricate, tune, and we are finally on the tuning step. So when you're tuning your project, this sort of loops us back through the entire framework. So at the start, we had consider, and when you're tuning, you'll consider new ways to make your project better, and then we're gonna go into research, and then we're gonna go into architect, and then we go into fabricate, and then we go into tune. Again, and it can just keep looping like that. So we just were at our tune step, and we're gonna come around back to the consider step. And what this looks like is if I had that cardboard phone stand that I wanted, where I had a little wedge in it right here, and my phone sitting on top. I finished my project. I thought it was really great, but after a little while of using it, right, all of our other steps are kind of one after another. What happens with our tune step is that it's a little bit more delayed. So you could be tuning something long after you've made it, even years later. I've done this where I've improved the strength of something or added another little feature to it. So in tuning, we might have our phone stand here, and then I realized I wanted to add a little cable holder to it. So I'm thinking about it. I'm like, how can I make this better? I'm considering ways to make a better phone holder and adding a cable holder. So I think about my ways, and then I'm gonna research it because there's lots of different ways that cable holders could be added to things. And then I can plan it if I really want to, right? These are sometimes steps that you go through in your brain, and they don't actually happen on paper for much smaller projects. In the case of this, adding a little cable slot right here is a pretty small project. You don't need to go super into it. But the more complex your project is, the more robust you want your system to be, and you want to take these steps a little bit slower. Then we can go into fabricating it, right? I'm gonna actually drill a hole in the bottom of my phone stand and maybe add some chamfers and make it look a little bit nicer. And then guess what? You might even be able to make that phone cable holder even better and tune it again by adding something else to it. So that's how our process is gonna keep looping all the way around. and that's our tune step. And what tuning really allows us to do is take a good project, what we plan on making at the start, and make it even better, take it to the next level. If you're really in depth with your tuning, it might require you remaking your project if it's something that's really important to you to tune a feature that's kind of already built in. But for most of us with our crafts, if we're tuning a project, we're just gonna be able to add some amazing functionality to things that we never would have thought of at the start of the project. And on robotics teams, some of the best teams in the world say that they never like to use the F word. Now, the F word is finished. And what would happen is if they felt like they were finished with their robot, they would stop trying to make improvements on it. They'd stop thinking about ways to make it better, stop testing things that might be broken, and then they'd get beat by the competition that was continuing to improve. In this case, it's not quite so competitive, but if you want to make the best project possible, you're gonna have to follow through those steps and keep improving. Click or tap on the screen right here to get that free 5-step guide of everything that we just talked about, or click or tap over here for another video that's gonna help you achieve your greatest crafting potential. I pray that the Lord would bless you and keep you, and that His grace would shine brightly upon you, and that you'd spend some time with Him as well as you're doing your DIY crafting.